Hello, everyone, and welcome. I'm Tony.
I am Joe.
I am Randy.
And this is Retro Zombie, a nerdy podcast about nerdy things. Tonight's episode, we're covering Sonic Mania. We're going to be giving our impressions and doing a little miniature review. And to that, we're going to start this episode the way we start every episode, by asking the age-old question, how did we nerd out this week? Joe, why don't we start with you? How did you nerd out this week?
This week I played a little bit more Secret World. I finally got more into that. Finally got it to run right. It's nice, not running it, 12 frames a second, because I have a really awkward gaming setup for my PC. And then I, played some Sonic Mania as we discussed. And I also recently started playing Eternal Darkness: Sanity's Requiem again on the GameCube. Classic. You should all play it.
You should. I've had your copy that you gave me forever. I just never put it on. But yeah, I mean, I've heard some good things. I like the idea of sanity mechanics. It's one of those things that's been on the back burner for me.
Good one.
What about you, Randy? How'd you nerd out this week?
Well, Sonic Mania, of course, that's a given. We're gonna talk about it, so no sense of going into too many details about that. I guess playing Undertale. Did a lot of Undertale today. A couple other days this week, so that's been pretty fun. That's kind of like a retro revival, I guess you could say, in a way, based on Earthbound, sort of. So I don't know, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, humor's the same. Yeah, got that platinum, didn't you?
I did. You don't even have to beat the game to get the platinum. I'm like fighting Metaton right now. I just got to go back and finish that game up soon. So
Yeah, you guys make me feel bad. That's another one that I've been itching to play. Just haven't
you
got
need
around to it. Yeah.
I'm telling you, it's good.
Yeah, Undertale's great. I got it on Steam. It's fun.
Well, as for me, I've been kind of emotionally down about my PS3 being apparently unrepairable, which for me means no Persona 5. So I've been drowning my tears in Final Fantasy XIV. Finally finished the main scenario quest. Now I'm in Heavensward, so we'll see how that goes. And as for all you guys listening, I hope you guys did something really cool too. So, moving right along, Sonic Mania. The internet's kind of on fire with this one. It's been celebrated as a return to form for the classic Hedgehog. What do you guys think about it? How did you like it?
I like it quite a bit. It definitely, it looks like a Sonic game, plays like a Sonic game. There are some things, like, I'm glad they really embraced, like, you could put this game up against, the original three. You could barely tell the difference aside from, the upscale and resolution. There's some things I wish they'd changed, like I wish there wasn't lives at all. But that's the only gripe. That's my one gripe. Don't have a live system. They're outdated. We don't need them. But everything's great. The twists on old stages, plus like the few new stages I've played in it, have been really fun. And I'm still drowned in Chemical Plant a lot.
Well, that's one thing I really liked about it. Like, obviously, they have remixes of old zones from the original games, but they found ways to squeeze in other zones. Like, for example, you have the ceiling switches from, what was it, Sandopolis Zone in Oil Ocean. I thought that was really neat, and there's tons of little stuff like that in there. I agree with you about the live system, but at least they don't have continues. So, I mean, you lose all your lives, you're just set back to the beginning of the zone.
Yeah, it's one of those things that I think's weird because like Mario games still have lives, like the 3D Mario games have lives. Like I get why Nintendo games had lives because they, it was deliberately to, extend the playtime of this game. If I got to start over, I keep playing it. But now it's like seeing a game with lives. I'm making a big deal out of it, and I know, but
Well, no, it gets annoying towards the end when the levels start getting harder and you keep getting game over and you have to start again, and you only have like 3 lives.
yeah, it's like I don't want to do
And at the
this.
beginning of the game, it's easier to pick up extra lives and stuff really fast. Towards later on in the game, it's kind of a little harder. So I died a lot in Sonic Mania to that Sand Ocean boss, and just by cheap ways too. I was getting crushed by things that like didn't even make sense. Like I was getting instant killed. That was probably my only gripe with that game. That boss really frustrated me, and I had to go back and do that zone probably like 4 times. It was really annoying. But other than that, That was my only complaint.
Other than that, it's great. I would Sega needs to do more. I want to see something like that. I want to see them do something with Streets of Rage, kind of in the same vein.
That would
Just
be interesting.
like dig up their old back catalog and give it to who people who want to make this type of game rather than a jaded team who's been doing this forever. I'm looking at you, Sonic the Hedgehog 4. But but yeah, I want to see more. I want to see them take this approach, with their IPs again.
Yeah, it's funny you should say that. I've actually heard more than once on the internet that Sonic Mania should have been Sonic 4. I don't agree with that just because of the sheer number of reused zones, but it's interesting to think about. Just kind of as a natural successor to the previous generation of games.
I suppose 2017 is the year of revivals. You got Crash Bandicoot. You got Metroid 2 coming out. Of course, there's Sonic. We've already talked about that. But I don't know. It just feels like there's a lot of nostalgia going on these days.
I mean, I guess if we're done with Sonic in general, let's go ahead and move into that subject, retro revivals. Since, like Randy said, it seems to be the year of the retro revival. What do we think of it? Like, what? Okay, before we get into that discussion, I suppose we should define what is a retro revival in terms of video games.
In terms of video games, it is a direct revival of an old IP, or it is a game made with older game design elements in mind,
Like Ukulele,
like Ukulele.
which that game gets roasted sometimes on the internet, but I love that game. Yeah. If you liked Banjo Kazooie, you'll like the game.
The worst thing I've heard about Ukulele is the camera. Is the camera is as bad as it was,
And they're working on that.
and
They're actually, I think they might have already got the patch out. I'm not 100% sure, but yeah, they've already fixed that, I believe.
yeah, I mean, if that's the only problem, then I'm all for it because I thought Banjo-Kazooie was a great game. But yeah, that's what it is. Or it's something like Shovel Knight, where it's literally every NES game you've ever played and mashed into one.
Yeah.
How many years has Shovel Knight been around now? 2, 3?
2 or 3.
It's still going strong.
Yeah.
Yeah, they've still got one more campaign to release for it.
That's crazy.
But I don't know. I like games like that, like Shovel Knight or what's it called, Axiom Verge, where you capture the essence of what made the old games great, but you bring modern design sensibilities to it. Like, the lack of lives in Shovel Knight, you just lose money when you die. Or like in Axiom Verge, where you keep all your progress no matter what. Apparently, we've all figured it out. Game designers have figured it out. Stuff like that, like losing your lives and being set back an hour or two. That's not fun.
Yeah, people give up on games for that, and it's a pretty big deal when it happens. It's interesting to see because we have the revival of kind of the 2D platformer on top of the revival of isometric role playing games. Every Infinity Engine game that's made has either gotten a spiritual successor or a direct thematic sequel, and we're seeing a resurgence in like build engine esque first person shooters with stuff like Strafe and this game I saw the other day. I think it's called Dusk. It looks like Doom. Like it literally looks like Doom. Plays like Doom. And then you have those revivals like Doom 2016, where it's that kind of design philosophy, key cards and everything, but the highest in graphics and in mechanics and physics and all that stuff that you can get. It's definitely, I think we finally went full circle in a way that we don't have to design by committee anymore, and we can actually tailor to everyone. But in that sense, we can also do what these hardcore guys want and then keep the essence of those old games alive.
Yeah, I'm actually glad you brought up Doom because I think that proves that you can have an older retro style game, but it still have a good, pretty coat of paint on it.
With saying that, I mean, so far, what have been out of the big retro revival of the last year and few years? What have been some of your personal favorites?
Well, I mean,
I feel like we already talked about all of them.
yeah. Well, I mean, I've mentioned Axiom Verge. Obviously,
That's a good one.
I spent hours on that. It's everything I wanted in Super Metroid, just about.
Well, Nintendo's not going to make it, so.
Yeah. But I don't know. I mean, I really liked when they went back to the 8-bit style of Mega Man 9 just really simplified the gameplay.
That was okay. It was pretty fun. I think Mega Man 9 is probably one of the better old school Mega Man games. I feel like there was a lot of passion and love.
Old school.
You know what I mean. I feel like they put a lot of passion into Mega Man 9, like down to the music. Like every stage has like an excellent theme track, and Mega Man 10 was kind of,
Well, yeah, I mean, that might have been a misstep, but
I wouldn't say misstep, but definitely it didn't feel like there was as much love in Mega Man 10.
well, no, that came across as, well, 9 made us a whole bunch of money. Maybe we should keep this cash cow going a little longer.
It's kind of like Mario Galaxy 2 with Mario Galaxy 1. Like, oh, yeah, well, just more of the same, which is not bad. More of the same, but it's like, I don't know.
The expansion pack that walks like a sequel.
But no, I mean, Mega Man 9 was, it's like, hey, let's take you guys back to 1988 when games were hard and the graphics weren't great, but it was fun.
Now, another thing that I think is I play a lot of Western RPGs. The big one that has like, if you're gonna play any of those like retro revival like isometric games, the one I would personally recommend everyone check out would be Pillars of Eternity. It's everything you loved about Baldur's Gate and Planescape Torment, but it really took a look at those games and like, what's the worst aspect of this? The combat. And the combat in those games, it's not why you're playing them, but they've really tried to at least make it engaging enough in a way that I think a lot of folks weren't really expecting because there's cooldowns and things like that. A lot of modern game design philosophies in that combat, which to the hardcore guys are like, hey, this isn't good. But I think you guys, like, if you guys went through Planescape today, you'd probably put it down an hour in because the combat's so bad. But I could see you guys giving Pillars a fair shake.
Pillars of Eternity?
Yeah. It's more akin to what like a modern MMO would be with cooldowns and buffs and things like that. That would be my personal favorite out of all those games. And then I'm also a big fan of Axiom Verge.
Do you know if Pillars of Eternity has controller support?
It's getting a console release, so if it doesn't have it now,
Because I have it, I got it in the Humble Bundle.
Oh, did you?
Like last month from the monthly bundle. So
I don't know if it does now, but it's finally getting a console release, so I'm sure it will.
does it play like Diablo?
It's not quite that actioning,
Okay.
but it is a lot of I'm gonna use this ability now here, and then there's a lot of like idle attacks.
Okay, I got you.
Oh, like off cooldown.
Yeah.
Yeah. Clearly, we have our favorites. We dig the concept of the retro revival. I think we have these games that we are nostalgic for, and we see them through these rose-colored glasses. We overlook their faults and their flaws, and it's interesting to see these new games come out that have all these things we liked about the old ones, but kind of smooth it over a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And in that sense, I think it's a success. But I kind of wonder if these newer games kind of lose a little bit of that charm in the process.
I'm not entirely sure because I am like going back to Axiom Verge. Playing Axiom Verge now, and this is going to be blasphemy to a lot of folks out there, has made playing Super Metroid more tedious because the simplest fix of automatically saving your game when you die, keeping your progress. Where in Metroid, and you can you miss a save room and you go fight a boss and then it kills you, you're out 2 hours. And it's easier to do in that game than I remember. So it's little fixes like that I think will keep it going. Now the retro for the sake of retro, like there's a wave of that going on Steam. I think that's going to do more harm than good. And we're not going to name names, but there are just games that are deliberately just trying to cash in on that without, like, hey, we sat down with GIMP for 2 hours and made some sprites and threw it in the game, and here's this crappy Mario clone.
Or else some off-the-shelf asset.
My opinion on games in general, is this: as long as they're good, people will keep playing them, and I think that applies there too. As long as these games keep being good, for every Guacamelee, there's going to be 1,000, 10 clones that are garbage, but you still have that one Guacamelee.
True.
So
that's my favorite Metroidvania game ever.
It's great.
I've got maybe a half hour into Guacamelee.
Oh my gosh! Like I was telling Joe the other day, I beat that game probably like 7, 8 times. I've beaten it on Wii U. I beat it on my 360 and my Xbox One and PS. I mean, I just beat it on like my Vita. Like,
So, Randy, how many times would you say you've bought that game?
well, I mean, a lot of it was cross-buy stuff,
Oh,
or I
okay.
got it from like a humble bundle where it was dirt cheap, or it was on sale for dirt cheap. I was like, well, I like this game a lot. Like, if it came out on the Switch, I'd buy it again on the Switch because
Yeah.
because I'm a dummy.
Yeah, you support games you
Yeah.
like. Like I've got Pillars of Eternity, but I'm gonna buy the definitive edition when it comes out on consoles just to have a box copy of it on my shelf, and just for that reason. And I know that's silly, but I'm gonna do it. I bought a box copy of Wasteland 2 just to have it, even though I'd already gotten through most of the game on the PC. But like I said, I definitely know, you really like a game and wanting it on everything you can possibly get it on.
Well, that and, it has a version on the Switch is a pretty good reason to get the game again. I mean, you could say that about a lot of stuff like Mario Kart 8, right, Joe?
Yeah, I'm gonna buy Mario
I
Kart 8.
bought it
Mm.
because I'm a dummy. I already bought all the DLC in the last game, so I already gave Nintendo. Well, they were really generous with the DLC pricing back then. I think it was like what, like $12 for
Yeah, it
like
was $12 for the
it was
season
$12
pass.
for the season pass, which is insane value. You got like what, 4 extra cups?
Yeah, it was 4 extra cups and then like
Yeah,
F-Zero levels and like an Excite Bike course, which is my favorite
yeah.
Mario Kart
A
map
lot of my
ever.
favorite levels come from the DLC tracks. Like, and I wish Nintendo would make more DLC.
One of these days we'll have to get into how Nintendo tricks us into buying games multiple times.
Well, there's a lot of games that if they were to come out on the Switch, I'd probably buy it again. Like I'm considering Rocket League on the Switch.
I'd buy Darkest Dungeon tomorrow if they like, hey, Switch version, here it is.
I'd buy Dark Souls on the Switch.
What would you say to the people who would look at the higher stakes gameplay of older games like Super Metroid, where you could easily waste an hour or two, and call that a rite of passage?
Your question, I don't understand it.
Well, like, there are people who would feel that making the games quote unquote easier takes something from the experience.
Uh, I don't know. As a kid, maybe, but I'm to a point where I have so many like just as an adult now, I can't waste my time on that anymore. I just don't have it. So I'm not saying I want my games like so easy I can just scroll through them, but the legitimately tediously designed gameplay, philosophies of yesteryear, I would rather go away. Like we were saying with like, the lives, like I know in Sonic Mania, I know it's not that big of a deal, but there's really no need for it in this day and age. That just wastes my time. If I want a game to respect my time, I have no right to judge the younger generation because their time is just as valuable as mine. So I'm all for it. I mean, if it gets more people playing games like this, then whatever. But I'm not one of those guys that's no get good, go play this.
So you're saying that older games were a lot harder, right? Like you didn't have a lot of the modern conveniences, right? Essentially,
Essentially, yes.
well, most modern games, yeah, they pretty much hold your hand these days. You can get a marker, like I mean, in Dead Space, you can like press the R3 button, I believe, and you can just like it'll show you a line and where to go, which I'm fine with that. It's there if you want to use it. And then you have games like Dark Souls, which is basically modern gameplay with classical elements. You don't have a map. You don't like have all these. You have to like figure out what items do. They don't tell you what they do.
Yeah.
You don't know what these enemies do, and like you have to like read up about it if you want to know, know. So games like that, when they do it right, if the gameplay is well, the core gameplay, which I feel like Dark Souls core gameplay does what it needs to do really well.
Mm-hmm.
So when you have something that does it well like that, you can forgive losing a map or waypoints, stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I like when games because you feel like a kid again. It's like, well,
What's around this corner, and that's you have to be able to play that up in a way. I'm like you, where in the sense that, yeah, if you're gonna show me where everything is, then why bother? Like, but it's the little conveniences that I'm saying. Like, don't put like arbitrary time limits on things for no real reason. Don't give me a live system. But I'm with you. It plays into exploration a lot. You get more out of it if you don't know what's around that
like
corner.
I feel like I'm exploring a new land. Like when I look at Skyrim, like I don't really. It's probably my fault. I'm looking at the map too much because it's there.
Yeah.
I don't really know my way. I don't know my lay of the land
Yeah.
exactly. Like in Dark Souls, I look at stuff off the distance, like, oh, this giant monument thing. I know where I am.
Yeah.
Dark Souls, I don't know. I gotta look at my map. Everything kind of blends together.
Yeah.
So stuff like that.
Depending on the game, it can be rewarding, and then depending on the game, it can also completely break the immersion. Like Bethesda's games, essentially, they went from being heavy on exploration and that being the big selling point of it to here's this map marker, go here, do this.
I think they wanted to reach a more casual audience.
Bethesda is a company that is they are far more concerned with the audience they want to get rather than the audience they have, and
They don't care,
they're not going to change until they start losing money.
and they're not. Everything that everybody revolts and gets mad about makes them money.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. Like the vocal minority, it doesn't matter to them.
But on the other hand, that gives them the freedom to do other things. Like because Skyrim was such a success, they basically made System Shock 3 with Prey, and I love that game. So it's like, okay, this if I get this new because Prey's a very old school game. Going back to the retro revival thing. I mean, Prey is a System Shock game in all but name. Like, there's the wrench, there's the hacking, there's everything. Them to be able to like take a risk like that on a game like that in this age, that's because they made $1 billion with Skyrim. They can afford to take a hit on this game because they made a lot of money elsewhere. I mean, I'm not the biggest fan of Bethesda as a developer, but as a publisher, I think they're okay with their kind of games that they publish rather than Skyrim gives me The Evil Within, and it gives me Dishonored, and it gives me System Shock 3, which is called Prey.
Yeah, we'll have to spend some time talking about the economics of video games because that's a pretty interesting point you brought up there.
The ends, in some way, will justify the means, unless you're EA.
I like the idea of trying to recapture lightning in a bottle because maybe it's my nostalgia talking, it probably is to a degree, but older games, and when I say older games, I'm talking like up to the SNES, maybe even into the PlayStation. It seemed like it was a different time.
Yeah.
And I feel like if developers want to try and recapture that and make new experiences, more power to them.
Well, what's going on is our generation is getting old enough to be making games now. So, what we like, what our generation likes is going to come back, basically. You have Sonic Mania, a game made by fans,
Basically, yeah.
hackers and modders. They made that game, and it was like a true love letter to, Sonic. So I feel like, our generation is up and coming, and we're starting to enter the workforce for making games.
The guy that made AM2R is working on Ori and the Will of the Wisps. So I mean, it's happening.
That's a guy who loved Metroid, and he's going to be working on a Metroidvania game. So yeah, I mean,
this is a very good point though, because like you said, the people who were kids back when these games came out, they're making the games now.
Yeah.
It's one of those things, like, I know the last episode we talked about how the secondary game market for that is exploding because we're adults now and we all have more disposable income to buy this stuff.
That's why everybody's going to buy the SNES Classic.
Yeah, pre-orders for that are gone.
Yep, I missed him.
I did too. I got Brittany got the call from GameStop, and we couldn't get there in time. She was just getting off.
What GameStop?
The one in the one over,
Yeah, okay.
But they called. They called. Like, hey, we got 8 of them.
Pre-orders?
Yeah.
That guy was gonna call me. He didn't call me.
Called me.
Well, gosh darn it. I'm gonna get one way or another. I have a feeling Nintendo's gonna have more. I don't know.
Well, I mean, I hope they keep it in stock. But before we stray too far, I just wanted to be very clear. I agree with the standpoint that we should be eliminating the ancient inconveniences.
Mm-hmm.
out of the older game formulas, like lives, continues, things like that, because they were all a holdover from the arcade days when the point was to keep people pumping quarters into the machine.
I wish Mega Man would do away with that.
I know, right?
Yeah, there's no reason to anymore. There's no reason to have lives.
Well, no, I like even Mega Man ZX, a freaking Metroidvania Mega Man game. It still had lives like that.
Have you ever played Rayman Legends?
I have not.
They don't have lives in that game, and they're really generous with their checkpoints.
Yeah,
You don't really ever have to overdo too much of what you've done unless it's like one of the music levels in the game, but stuff like that,
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm a firm believer that there are better ways to make games difficult without resorting to cheapness. And that's level design, that's game mechanics, that's anything.
that's balance. And then you can't go too far the other way. Like one could argue this could be technically a retro revival, but compare Bioshock to System Shock 2, the game it's a spiritual sequel to. How Vita chambers work in Bioshock is completely busted versus how they worked in System Shock. In System Shock, you had to pay to reuse them, and if you died, it was game over. In Bioshock, you just respawn and then keep moving.
And I like that though.
Yeah, but it makes the game it makes the game needlessly easy in the sense that like you can get through that entire game with a wrench. I've done it.
Can't you turn that off though?
Upon the initial release, no, but they eventually updated it. Like, yeah, this is kind of busted. So they released an update where you can turn that off. But it's one of those there has to be a balance because you can easily break your game. And Bioshock, as it was originally released, was completely broken.
Well, I think there's a difference between hand holding and just getting out of the way so the player can play the game.
Now, with this whole kind of retro revival going on, what is one either game franchise or just general genre you'd like to see come back in full force?
I really want a real Banjo-Kazooie 3.
Like, not ukulele. Bring back Banjo and Kazooie. Do it now.
Yes, please. Which, I don't know. I feel like ukulele pretty much was Banjo-Kazooie 3, and for all intents and purposes, it pretty much was, but I don't know. I just feel like I want like a real one, just a real sequel. So that's probably what I would vote for.
I would like to see a proper Samurai Showdown like them. I want to see SNK actually bring back Samurai Showdown.
Oh man, that would be really cool. Do you think it could compete in the era of Soul Calibers and or would they just keep it straight 2D in your mind?
I would want them to keep it straight 2D. I would up the gore level, like since they're fighting with swords. I would do like super. I would do like Guilty Gear X Third kind of style graphics, but make it hyper violent. And then, but hey, have it be deep. We're not gonna, we're not gonna Mortal Kombat to it with Samurai Showdown, but like just kind of embrace the fact that we have all this modern tech on top of just really high end sprites, tight mechanics, but make it, give it a gimmick where hey, it's this, it's Samurai Showdown, but you can take off Hamuru's head.
You know what I'd like to see, and you guys might think I'm silly for this, but I'd like to see a really good rail shooter.
You're silly.
I am silly.
I'm just kidding.
But,
No.
I mean, we don't have light guns anymore with LCD screens, but VR.
They could do that.
We got Res.
There is Res. There's also a Dead Space Extraction. It was made for the Wii. There's a PS3 version of it as well. I started playing that one day just casually because I had it because it came with Dead Space 2. And 3 hours later, I'm like, oh, this is a real video game. It's also the game that made me realize that I don't like the modern corridor shooter because I realized, like, what the difference between this game is and a COD campaign? I'm not pushing up. That's the only difference.
Pretty much, yeah.
Because there's a fully fleshed out story, there's branching paths, and I was like, oh, this is a real video game. I thought this was going to be some gimmicky, here's some necromorph, Dead Space stuff. But there's characters and a thought out plot, and but yeah, if you want a really good light gun game, Dead Space Extraction.
Fair
if
enough.
you haven't played it.
Yeah, I definitely have to give that one a shot.
The game does not get enough love.
thank you for joining us. If you'd like to find us on social media, we're on Facebook, Twitter, and Twitch as Retro Zombie Cast. You can also send us an email at retrozombiecast@gmail.com. We're looking for questions, comments, suggestions for future topics. Anything is welcome.
And don't forget to check out our friends at Ben Bitten Clothing at benbittenclothingstore.com for the coolest zombie wear out there.
Join us next week where we're going to be doing a Season 7 recap of Game of Thrones. Until then, thank you for joining us. Have a good evening.